Hello, everyone. We're back with another Robin Hood moment. Although the World Health Organization recently declared that COVID-19 is no longer a public health emergency, we're still dealing with its lingering effects in New York City classrooms. The pandemic affected all kids, but especially those living in poverty. In addition to suffering adverse emotional and behavioral effects, many fell behind academically. We're here to talk about high-impact tutoring, which is a critical evidence-based intervention that students need citywide amidst a historic disruption in education. I'm Crystal Cooper, Deputy Director of Communications at Robin Hood, and today we're chatting with Allison Welch, Program Officer for our school-age children portfolio. Welcome, Allie.
Hi, Crystal.
So let's start off with the basics. Can you explain to us what high-impact tutoring is?
Sure. High-impact tutoring is an evidence-based intervention that you can provide to students to try and accelerate their learning and support the learning that's happening in the classroom. And so there are some characteristics that define high-impact tutoring or high-dosage tutoring. One is the dosage. So we want to make sure that students who are participating in this type of intervention are meeting with a tutor at least 3 times per week for 30 minutes each session. We want to make sure that there's a consistent relationship being formed between the tutor and the student. So a lot of tutoring programs of this type are match a tutor and a student together, and that pair stays working together throughout the entire intervention cycle. And then we see highly effective tutoring programs using things like data to monitor student learning. They're best aligned to the school curriculum if possible, and it should include formalized tutor training and support so that tutors who are often not teachers, they're maybe paraprofessionals, they might be college students, they might be volunteers, that they're coming in and they have a baseline understanding of how to work effectively with students and also how to implement lessons in a way that's going to be engaging and effective.
I'm so intrigued by that. This sounds like a real benefit that New York City students are able to access free of charge. I'm curious how this actually works. Is it one-on-one? Is it in group settings? How long does tutoring go on?
Yeah, so I think it can be either one-on-one. We've seen that to be the route that some tutoring programs take. We've also seen some programs decide to take a small group approach. Typically, what we see in the research is that there should be no more than 4 students with every tutor in a session. And then in terms of length of the programming, we've supported some community partners that do a 10-week cycle, and they monitor student learning over the course of the beginning to the end of that cycle. There are programs that we support that work over the course of a semester, are working over the course of a school year. It is really important that there's consistent tutoring happening throughout the week. So we're not looking at programs that are just 1 time per week. They're typically at least 3 times per week, and students are meeting with their tutor for about 30 minutes.
And this happens during the school day?
It can happen during the school day or out of school. You know, one of the challenges with this is that students need to attend the session, right? It's not effective if they're signed up and they're not going. What we've seen is that for some programs, if they're able to work with a school that can embed the tutoring within the school day, if kids are already going to be coming to school, it increases the likelihood of that attendance being consistent. It doesn't have to happen during the school day, but that is a route that some of our partners are taking to try and make sure that they're getting that right dosage with kids.
Awesome. I love that this is super tailored to the needs of the kids and just meeting them where they are. So, we talked about the pandemic going into this conversation. Can you define the pandemic learning loss crisis in New York City? What were you actually seeing during the 2020-2021 school year and beyond in terms of student performance that made you say, whoa, we've got to intervene here?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be a surprise to anyone to hear that there were inequities present in the education system nationally and in New York City prior to the pandemic, right?
I students read that, even before this learning disruption, only slightly more than 1/3 of Black and Latin students were on grade level in English and math. And I guess that was an existing gap, right?
Yeah. And so we went into the pandemic with some of those gaps already present. And then with the disruption where kids were not able to go to school, they were in remote learning, which provided a lot of stress and hardship for families who were already trying to maintain physical safety, maintain access to food and health and the things.
So learning just wasn't the priority.
It wasn't. And imagine being a 5-year-old in kindergarten, instead of being in your classroom, sitting in a circle with your teacher and your classmates, having to log in on a Zoom screen every day. And so learning was just far more variable throughout the pandemic because of remote instruction, which then turned into hybrid, sometimes in person, sometimes remote. The result of that was there was just a lot of disruption, and that exacerbated the gaps that were already present. And so I joined Robin Hood at the end of 2020 and very quickly joined a team of people who were looking really critically at how do we support students across the city to recognize the current context and the impact of the pandemic, and how can we support accelerating learning. And this was something that we weren't the only ones looking at this. A lot of people in the city and across the country were looking at it. And an intervention that really quickly bubbled up to the surface as being particularly effective was tutoring, and in particular, high-impact tutoring. And so I think, this isn't a new concept. Before the pandemic, you would think of tutoring as after-school programs, meeting with an adult who cared about you and working with you on your homework. This is different, right? This is high impact, has all the characteristics that we've been talking about, and it bubbled up as one of the things that has the potential to accelerate learning far more than other types of intervention.
I'm so glad that you went there because, obviously there was a real need to get kids back on track in their studies, and that was actually one of the pillars of Robin Hood's COVID recovery strategy. So you're a part of that, getting kids back on track in the classroom. I'm curious, because of these existing gaps pre-pandemic, why do you see high-impact tutoring as part of the larger fight against poverty in New York City?
I mean, first and foremost, I think it's shown to be able to add additional months of learning for students when implemented effectively. Research is showing that students can add an additional 5 to 10 months of learning if they're getting tutoring on top of the support that they're getting in the classroom and at home, etc. And I think for Robin Hood, one of the things that we've done is we've really focused tutoring around 2 areas. One is foundational literacy, kindergarten through 2nd grade literacy, and the other is middle grades math. And the reason why we've done this is because 3rd grade reading proficiency and algebra success are 2 of the most important indicators of a student's future success.
Wow. So their lifetime kind of academic performance, and then, what they end up doing after school or after their school career.
Yes, because if a student can leave 3rd grade reading proficiently, and if they have the opportunity to pass Algebra 1 by end of 8th grade, even end of 9th grade, that really increases their ability to graduate high school on time. And we know that high school graduation boosts earnings significantly for New Yorkers. And if you graduate high school college ready and you then go to pursue an associate's or bachelor's degree, then we know that your earnings boost is even.
That is literally a pathway out of poverty.
Exactly. And so for us at Robin Hood, that's kind of why we're focusing on high impact, high dosage tutoring, but we're also really clear about wanting to support programs that are accelerating learning, particularly in the early literacy and middle grades math space, due to this connection to these mobility milestones that really connect to high school graduation.
I'm curious sorry to put you on the spot, so it's okay if no, feel free to speak in generalities. Do you have any data on outcomes? I mean, it doesn't have to be specific to this latest round of post-pandemic tutoring, but just with this evidence-based, practice in general.
So I can't quote direct outcomes.
Yes.
I mean, I think Robin Hood is doing 2 things in terms of our investments. One is we've supported some direct service grants. So these are community partners that are actually going into schools and implementing tutoring programs on the ground. Mm-hmm. And then we also, at the last year, started to support a more system-level investment across New York City. And that's really just getting off the ground. They're a couple months into implementing tutoring with kids. And so it's a little bit too soon to tell in terms of what is the impact on academic outcomes. But I will say there's been such a focus on high quality implementation and making sure that programs are meeting the criterias and indicators of what we know leads to academic outcomes based on the research.
Right.
And if a program isn't meeting the mark, there's a lot of support to kind of get them to improve over time. And so that gives us here at Robin Hood a lot of confidence that given high quality implementation that we're going to see the outcomes follow this summer and then into next school year as we continue to support some of these efforts.
Great. And, you continue to kind of like read my mind with where you go with your answers, because I was going to ask you, now that there's such a glaring need and I'm assuming families and schools want these supports, do we have any plans to scale our efforts? And like, what does the effort to scale to more New York City families, high impact tutoring look like?
Yeah. And so the system level effort that we're supporting with New York City Public Schools and Expand Ed, our community partner, they are reaching 3,500 kids this year in the first year of implementation. They're on track to scale up to reach 5,000 kids next year and then 6,500 kids the year after.
Amazing.
And so that's still a very small percentage of the total number of students attending K-12 schools across New York City. But we are really hopeful because we think that with a very intentional scale-up effort that we can maintain quality and see academic outcomes coming through and therefore take a lot of learnings and be able to continue the work moving forward.
Great. So you see this as not just, a solution that we're implementing at this critical juncture post-pandemic, but a multi-year effort to bring New York City students' performance up and, increase their lifetime earnings and potential outcomes.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we started investing in high-impact tutoring programs as a result of the pandemic in an effort to really accelerate learning, but we see this strategy as really something that should be staying in schools in the long term. And so we're working across Robin Hood to really make sure that tutoring has a place within our portfolio and that there's coherence and alignment with some of the other efforts that are happening across New York City public schools so that this can be something that is not just because of the pandemic, right? It really has a long-lasting
integrate in that full system.
Yep,
amazing.
Absolutely.
Allie, we're so glad that you've joined us today and wish you and your team nothing but luck and success in rolling high-impact tutoring out to even more New York City public school students over the course of the next few years.
Thanks so much, Crystal. It's been a pleasure.
We hope that you keep in touch with Robin Hood for all of the latest information about the wide range of solutions we fund to help New Yorkers permanently escape poverty. Please visit us at robinhood.org.